No, I do. I mean, I don't drive it a lot, therefore it normally just summer. But yeah, I have it insured because I share the number plate with the other car, so I potentially can drive it anytime.
Okay.
But basically, it needs time, it needs sun, it needs the right roads, so it needs a lot of.
But you never take it out in the middle of winter, or?
Basically not, because you really need proper dry roads. Yeah, if not, you need to be a real proper skilled driver.
But you're a bit of a skilled driver, aren't you?
Yeah, I didn't crash it so far.
Okay.
Yeah, so must be okay.
Wow. So so you grew up. You from Belgium originally,
Mm-hmm,
yeah?
mm-hmm.
And whereabouts in Belgium?
I'm born nearby Charleroi. It's southwest of Brussels, like 50k.
Yeah.
Towards France. I mean, you can tell my accent. So Walloon, yeah, that's where I come from. It's a quite sad post-industrial area.
So, but at the French-speaking part, yeah.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
And do you speak any Flemish at all?
I had to learn some in the school, and in the meantime, I've completely, I had to write over that part of my brain. There was not enough space anymore, so I decided to store some other knowledge.
So, is there? I know very little about Belgium, but I know that there's kind of like, in a way, like in Switzerland, where there's different like speaking parts. Is there kind of a bit of a rivalry between the various different languages?
Yeah, absolutely, and probably ever worse today than in the past. But I could tell you on the people level, not necessarily, but politicians, of course, have made this a huge topic. Now, I don't live in Belgium since 30 years.
Wow.
So, I never worked there. I didn't really study there. I mean, I finished high school there, and that was it. So I'm not
touch,
I'm not really into this type of what's going on politically there. I'm not really informed.
So, like growing up in Belgium, where you're from,
mm-hmm.
when were you first exposed to design?
Very good question, because it's not really a design affine environment. I could say creativity, or at least like drawing, sketching, what we called comics, like BD, we say, like it's really a culture in Belgium. So I think in school this is something that was very common, to even have kids go to some sketch class to learn how to draw comics. And I didn't do that. I was not really interested in that. I was always interested in, cars, boat, bikes, anything that.
So petrol head first, yeah. And when did art come along?
Yeah, it came because that was my way to get in touch with it. Because yes, you would have here or there some cool car, but actually not that many around. And my way to make these mine, to get to understand them better, was pretty much to draw them, to build them in whatever I could find. So that's probably how it started. My mother was a hobby painter. My brother was really into cars. He had also motorcycles. He bought tons of motorcycle and cars magazines. So I usually, even probably before I could read, he's 7 years older. So I was always looking at that stuff. And I remember like Hot Rod magazine he would buy. It was kind of his thing back then. And I liked it. Yeah.
Did you know, like you said, like all the kids were already sketching and really into comics and all that sort of stuff. In high school, did you already know that there was this thing called car design, or in your case,
No,
motorcycle design?
not exactly. It took a bit, and I started actually as soon as I could, because I was not really a fan of school in general. And as soon as I could, I took a direction towards. I had a art section. Actually, I could select that for the last 4 years, if I remember. And of course, they would tell you to, draw trees and plants and fruits and I don't know what. And the teacher were desperate because I would turn any briefing into something with wheels. And then I think someone told me a bit more about design, and they advised me to go to Brussels. There is a design school, very reputed, La Cambre. And I went there once, and I got their curriculum book, and I looked at it, and I said, that's for sure not the thing that I'm interested in.
Oh, wow.
Because it was very theoretical, and I don't want to say something wrong. It's probably not Bauhaus, but it was something very, very philosophical about design, and it was not what I had in mind. And for sure, in the last, let's say, a few years before that, I started to pick up article in car magazine or motorcycle magazine about maybe this one concept car, and there you started to see about maybe there is a profession behind, and there are people that actually sketch these things. So it became a bit more obvious to me that was possible. But then I realized you can actually not get this profession in Belgium. There is anyway locally no manufacturer. And the real breakthrough, I remember it, was my brother brought back another. It's really all his fault. He brought back home once auto and design. So back then there was probably 3 shops where you could buy it. I think he was already studying in Brussels. He brought one of these magazines back, and I still have it. And it still
that same magazine.
Sure, and it still looked new because I probably opened it like very carefully and looked at it like this was it. Yeah.
The Bible.
Yeah.
They were so expensive as well, right?
They were pretty expensive, yeah.
When you obviously went to the art center in Europe, is it Switzerland?
In Switzerland, yeah.
What led you to that course?
Yeah, I mean, as said, I visited few design school, or at least I visited the, let's say, classical design school in Belgium. I even been told, maybe you should do architecture or something like that. And I finished high school with the minimum grade in every topics, and it was not that I was that average in every topic. I could not stand to put more effort in it. I was just not interested. And then I think my parents got quite worried that if I would start the next cycle and pick, say, architecture, it would take me, 3 years, 4 years to make the first year probably. So they were also wondering, is this really making sense? And then I also found also one article about the school in Vevey, and we happened to have a relevant uncle. He had an apartment in Switzerland nearby in Valais. And I think during a holiday, my parents visited the school, and I think they came back. I wasn't there on their first trip, and they came back saying, "That could fit you."
And then did you go and see it yourself?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. And then we went together. I mean, I was convinced it would fit me anyway, because as soon as I've seen the photo, and they were working on models, clay model and sketching, and I was already into relatively high end rendering before that. I mean, I due to my art section, I had learned the basics, and then I was figuring out. Back then, they were, car designer would use marker and pastels, but I didn't figure out pastels so good. I didn't understand what it was, and I always thought it was airbrushed.
Yes.
So I got myself an airbrush, and I became some kind of airbrush master. Yeah.
But who showed you how to do that? Did you learn this in school?
I learned it by myself pretty much.
Wow.
Yeah.
That definitely makes you a lot more smarter than I did, because when I was at college, the tutor brought in an airbrush for us to kind of play around, actually just for me, because I was the only person interested in car design, and they brought this airbrush in and I just couldn't do anything with it. I mean, I only had a day to play with it, in all fairness, but it was it took me a while to realize that you've got to mask everything up, and
not really intuitive, but I said, once you understand the shadings and so on, to me it felt very, very natural, and as I said, I spent hours and hours and hours, and I still have some of these, because I used to make big formats. That was probably also a bit easier. You don't want to do something an A4 that would be really super hard, but on these large format, made sense.
So it's Sebastien, straight out of university, you get a job at Piaggio in Italy, and I am assuming then that by this stage you've already worked out that you want to do motorcycles.
So it actually went like this, that the school in Vevey had a car as the focus. They called it transportation. The reality, it was really purely automotive, and we had sponsored project from the fourth term on, every term, like with a different manufacturer. And I think my first sponsored project terms was with Piaggio, which was unusual. It's a bit of a story, but as you are interested in stories,
yes.
the Piaggio was sent to look for such partnership, because back then their CEO was the young, let's say, nominated Gianni Agnelli. So he was gonna be the Mr. Agnelli successor of the, let's say, dynasty, and his future was for sure to run Fiat and the whole group. But in order for him to learn, they decided to send him to Piaggio. It's an old story, from previous generation. There was already the mother. Piaggio was married with an Agnelli, and so it was a logical step, let's say, in being a CEO and in running a company. But he was educated in America. I think he did the Brown University, and he was absolutely a fan of, let's say, an international environment. And when he realized probably the state of development of this beautiful icon, there was the Vespa and Piaggio in Tuscany, he probably felt this is fantastic, but nothing has happened since the 60s. It stayed the same, the factory looked the same, the people worked the same, so I guess it was pretty clear he must have sent people out saying, you want to have partnership with engineering university and design university and international. And so we had this sponsored project. I think I did a good job. I remember I did a full-size tape drawing with airbrush, because of course that was not a problem. And we had a presentation in Pontedera, and we were invited in a fantastic hotel villa. So the whole class went there, and for us it was like holiday. And I remember making quite an impression there, because I basically told the guy that what they were doing was really passé, and that, by the way, I would have about the same opinion about what Fiat and Alfa Romeo and all the other guys were showing back then. And he probably liked it. So I got the job even before finishing the school, and I wasn't really sure if I wanted that. But at some stage I thought, what can go wrong? Yeah, it's Tuscany. It's gonna be sunny. It's gonna be great food. It's gonna be cool. Let's have a look. Yeah, this guy might be the future. CEO. So I thought they cannot be wrong to follow this invitation.
And you guys had all sorts of partnerships as well, like with that I understand that you were involved in, with like IDEO and Guigiaro and Bertone and all these places.
Yeah, I mean, and that's exactly what happened. I joined, and within the first 3-4 months, I guess, I was sent to California for regular trips, because we have been running a project with IDEO, which was completely a cultural shock for them, but also for me, because back then IDEO was already, probably was the best time of them, also still being in design, but already being very much in innovation. And it was complete mind opening for me, because they would not talk about design in the way I had learned it at Art Center. Even if it was an American school, we were really hands-on. Yes, we talked strategy, but it wasn't really design thinking, which I think was already what IDEO would practice back then. And so our whole project it was about innovation on micromobility, and we came up with 20 ideas we thought were absolutely innovative, never seen before. I don't know, connected helmet and scooter that would project laser light on the floor, and all kinds of things that have also later on happened. But it was really a great experience to be sent there for, I think it was trips of 3-4 weeks every time, working in IDEO together with their designers. They didn't have a clue about designing. We didn't have a clue about how to innovate.
Okay.
And it was really great working together.
This company, I have no idea what they're doing now, or if they're still around, but it seemed like, I mean, when I was at university, which is a little bit after you, they were really like, it was among the top design consultancies.
Absolutely,
in
and
the
I think
world.
still is, but it's clear that in a similar ways, if you talk about design thinking, it has to do a lot about the process of thinking, and they use the word design as an expression to talk about the creation of idea. In the similar way, back then, even if they would recruit product designer out of school, I had also some fellow Art Center guys working there. It was already fully on consulting, research. Basically what we were doing there were research, so we did extensively research on the US market together.
Strategy,
innovation, lots of workshop about how to bring up these ideas using all kinds of brainstorming technique. Today, you say brainstorming sounds totally logical. Back then it was like, woo, we are doing something really special. Using post-it. You hear me? It was really fresh and different in the way they would approach projects, and that really opened my mind about exactly this strategic element around design. I think Art Center was brilliant to bring the hands-on skills, and I'm pretty sure that I picked up at IDEO a lot about how to think, and even if this was as a customer, they really practice this co-creation, and therefore I could really take part of this process.
As an Art Center graduate yourself, I know that Switzerland is no more, but as I understand that the curriculum was very similar to that of the US. I've had a lot of people from Art Center on the podcast. Wojtek is one of them, and I, from the outside, it seems like there are some. For the most part, the quality of graduate that they put out is very, very impressive. For me, there's kind of two real, there's the obvious ones, like, the ones that come up all the time, places like Pforzheim, for example, but the two standouts for me in terms of a well-rounded graduate with the soft skills and the hard skills to actually the craft of design. One of them is Art Center, and the other one seems to be ISD. Those are two that kind of stand out for me. What was Art Center at all? Are you saying that they weren't that focused on the thinking aspect of it?
The philosophy that we practiced back then in Art Center, and I was in Art Center Europe, and we always said the Art Center Europe is quite different than Art Center in US. That was the opinion of the student. I don't think it was that different, though. We had few teachers coming from US, and the mindset and the way the project was set up was very much the same. And these terms, so 3.5 months focused, 14 weeks, I remember, 14 weeks on projects. And it was really like a project. So you would get a brief, and we would be in a small class, I don't know, 15 maybe maximum student. And the theme would be given, and that would be it, yeah? And then you would do your project. So we did, in 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th terms, we did what in maybe other design university you do once your diploma project. We did such a project, every term.
Wow.
And it was really super intensive. You would have, besides that, drawing class where the teacher was a bit. It was a bit the mindset of Art Center. It was a bit military. So they would tell you, 50 sketch to hang on the wall. We're not talking digital printouts. We're talking about hand sketch. 50 sketch on the wall for next week. That would be week 1. Yeah. So you would go home and think, how can I do that? Spend nights with your colleagues sketching, drinking beer to stay motivated and eventually you would succeed, make your 50 sketch, and they would tell you next week it's 80, yeah. And so you would really get into a certain hardcore training that would for sure bring up the skills, because where did we learn? We learned from the other student, the student in the higher class, and they would send professional from the industry. So on weekend you would have people such as Pinky Lai from Porsche.
Wow.
Would drive down from Stuttgart. He would come and he would make a little speech, make a sketch demo, and tell us about... He was
quite an intense character, right?
Extremely. I mean, that's why I name him first, because he's been extremely challenging to us, but he was also extremely funny, because he would also tell us stories about his RCA time and how competitive he was, and how he would isolate in a room and make sure that no one could see his stuff and all that, which was not at all the mentality at Art Center, but something for sure. He also was extremely skilled and brought us to the next level, because he was not talking about lines and volumes on car. He would look outside to his Porsche parked under a tree, and he would start talking about how surface reflected light and that basically he designed that. He didn't design the car. He designed how reflective area would be on the car. Yeah, and this was the kind of thing that for sure opened up our mind quite a lot.
Did you have Scott Robertson as a tutor at all?
He also came, I think, during the study for at least one term, if I remember.
Was it him and Neville Page?
Yeah, both. Yeah.
And what do you remember much about that?
Yeah, same. I think it was also a pure injection of that Art Center US, where they were much more Hollywood driven, so they were already collaborating, I think, with filmmakers and sci-fi, and for sure they brought that with them. We also had student exchange, so we had some some Art Center California student coming over, and if we used a meter vellum, it was called
the
paper, they would use a 2 meter vellum paper. So if you would sketch the car 1 meter, they would sketch the car and a scenery on top of it. Yeah. So it was very much, and this is why I meant early on talking about IDEO. Art Center was very much about hands-on, the form, the style, the craft. It was about craft, yeah. And I think the craft informs a lot, because the craft teach you a lot if you bring it to a certain level. Probably we would not have been that receptive back then to the strategic part. And I think the strategic part you learn then entering company and realizing that with all the great skills of the world, with average management or unclear strategy, you cannot get the horsepower on the ground. And then starts the first frustration, and then starts the first motivation to understand how could we bring this thinking quality and this understanding into company. And at least on my side, that's very much how it went.
Were you ever tempted in those early days to immediately just kind of branch out on your own and try and work for yourself? Or did you feel that you needed to get some experience first in industry?
It basically happened, but as you are digging, I've been for about 4 years, 3.5, 4 years in Piaggio. And I had a very interesting development there, because I joined as the one guy that they recruited directly from the school. I was the first foreigner that would enter the design studio. I didn't really speak Italian back then. No one there spoke proper English. So it was really, for the first few months, an absolute cultural shock. I had a good time because I could learn a lot, and they were still doing the design as once. I listened a few days ago actually to Pata Boss,
okay,
your podcast, and it was really touching for me, because the way he explained how he made his internship there. Actually, he made his internship. He started his internship few weeks after I left, and I left because I've been in several projects. Gianni Agnelli sent us to US to do this IDEO project. Then I came back. I've been part of project where we've been in Turin working with Bertone and Stola and other company, and we have been working on all this new mobility already back then, electric or different layouts of vehicle, 3-wheel, 4-wheel, all kinds of. And at some stage, unfortunately, Gianni Agnelli died of a cancer, and the whole company, I think, just went
imploded.
Back into, I think the seed and the injection he made of new got, collapsed within months, and I was fighting. I had introduced clay in the studio. I remember Pata talking about, they work with foam and stuff. I had introduced clay there, and it was really interesting because there was an absolute resistance to it. I had tremendous fight. I mean, this is the period of my life where I learned the most.
But how old are you? You still like super early in your. This is like,
as I said, I was 2 years in the career. After 2 years, I got promoted. I think this was one of the last action of. Probably Agnelli push back then, because I've been moaning very hard, probably to a point where people wanted to kick me out. But finally I got promoted. They told me, you should take over the design team there. It was a pretty small team, like 5 guys. And I didn't want to do that. I remember having conversation with the founder of IDEO back then, because we were running the project still, telling him I want them to go and recruit a proper design director.
Right.
It shouldn't be me. And it was anyway not the task they really gave me. They basically wanted to keep me good, not moaning too much. And I took that as an opportunity, and I said, fine, I'm going to introduce clay, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And it got to a point where basically the new R&D CTO walked into a meeting and basically told me that he would stop all this. And I told him, fine, if you stop all this, you're going to do this alone, which I think was exactly what he expected.
Okay.
I mean, by today, I know that this is exactly what he hoped I would say.
Yes.
And then I walked out and I started freelancing. I worked for Aprilia back then for a year. And
what was the freelancing landscape like then? I mean, had you started to be connected with other people in the industry, or did it go through an agent?
Yeah, no. The good thing is Art Center in Europe had stopped rather quickly after I left. This was the point where the school in US decided to stop the activity in Europe, but still we had a pretty strong network within the alumni back then. And I had a few phone calls here and there, and I happened to also in that case be recommended. And one former R&D, also innovation manager of Piaggio, had moved on to Aprilia, and he gave me my first job. So
wow. Sebastien, what is a young person at that age where they basically get offered, I don't know, to run the design team? You obviously already on your internship were opening your mouth and borderline cocky. Where did that confidence come from?
I was not interested in the role. I don't think I was prepared for the role. I was just so confident that the way it was done was not, let's say, up to date, and that probably the closest way, I could have just left, but I didn't see it. Maybe this was also the naivety of the age, but I didn't see this as an option. I thought, it has to happen. We have to move on. And again, this role was for me a chance to say, hey, I'm gonna get at least a little bit more lever that I can bring some topic into the organization, which worked. I did actually that. I took the first freelance clay modeler from the industry into Piaggio. I could imagine he must have earned about 5 to 10 times what most people did there, and they must have thought I'm completely crazy. But for me, it was important to show them using different material, different processes could definitely bring different results as well. I was not prepared. I'm sure I've done a lot of things absolutely in the wrong order. As I said, I learned the most back then because living there was fantastic in Tuscany. I learned Italian, and it was really a people learning exercise for me, because probably this is also common to many designers. This craft, this creating, this drawing is a very introverted action.
Yes.
It takes a lot of time. I remember having friends in Belgium wanting me to go out with them, and me saying, hey, I haven't finished this big airbrush poster or this or that, and they were completely.
They didn't understand.
They didn't understand why I was wasting so much time with this, and I guess it was because I also didn't have this big drive towards exchange. I was probably some would say shy, or I wasn't drawn towards pure fun and then let's see later on. I really was passionate with learning this craft, and Piaggio really pushed me out of my comfort zone, because getting this responsibility really forced me to interact with all kinds of people in the organization. They were all super friendly, but they were all super not moving, and if you would not find a way to move them, it wouldn't happen.
Okay.
So there, I'm pretty sure I've learned a lot about what it takes
to motivate
people to differentiate how you talk and how you require people to do things. So that's something I'm pretty sure I got most exposure to back then. Yeah.
So after that whole experience, which sounds like an incredible learning experience, and it wasn't just the case of you being a junior designer, you go on to you spend some time at Honda, and is also still designing two wheels.
Absolutely. I was in the Offenbach studio. And this is a satellite studio. It's a Japanese company in Germany. And on the one hand, for me, it's an absolute, how should I say, contrast, because a lot of the things I've been, pushing for are they the norm, yeah. They follow I would call it today rather traditional design process, but that was really up to date. They have a very I would say respectful way to deal with a creative and design environment. So the studio is really great, lots of space and light and tools and everything. The Japanese are absolutely gentlemen when it comes to interacting with Europeans. They are really friendly, really correct. So this whole environment was really refreshing. Same few years later, you then realize the other side of the story, which is it was really a place where they sent very successful and experienced designer to Europe to learn them to become manager. Yeah, so they wouldn't want to, same as military, they wouldn't want them to make this step at home. They send them somewhere, promote them, and bring them back. Yeah.
Okay, it's a strategic thing.
It's a strategic thing. I think it's also a reward for a Japanese person to be open to complete new culture, to travel. This is absolutely unique, and not everyone gets this chance. So I can understand from the other perspective why they behaved the way they did. We have been, as European, a bit their guinea pigs, because they didn't need to do research to figure out what people thought. They had a Belgian guy, a French guy, an Italian guy, a German one, and they would understand what are the different interests and mindset of people in Europe, or at least they thought they would understand. Yeah, what you would then realize is that the cultural gap was such that it did take them 3-4 years to get a bit of a overview. This was usually the time where they send them back to Japan.
Okay. Do you think these opportunities existed back then? Like, because I've interviewed one Japanese designer, Shiro Nakamura, and also a few designers that have been out in Japan. And one of the things that Shiro did, for example, which was like he moved company fairly early on in his career, and that's something that's not common in Japanese culture. It's generally accepted, or at least at that time, that you would join a company and you would stay there for like your whole career. And do you think that they had these were kind of incentives that were dreamt up to ensure that sort of longevity?
It could be, but I think it was much more done within the mindset that in order to be able to take responsibility and in order to better, let's say, serve the strategic need of Honda, you would need to understand this market. They were really in Honda. There is a very strong culture in Honda. I think the founder is still present. You still feel back then at least, but I suppose to some extent still today. And they had introduced rather advanced approach towards customer. You could say they were customer centric, much more than any European company, because they invaded, or they at least took the burden to enter complete new market, understand the market from inside, and then develop specific product for these markets. So this is something that it took for some European company, maybe the last decade. But for many of them, they thought if we produce premium cars, the rest of the world are going to like them the way they are, and we do not need to think about it. Japanese company had very early on this mindset to first understand the market, customize their product to the market, and then enter these markets. So you felt that
innovators.
Yeah, and therefore they wanted to send the people over. They wanted to have a local staff that they knew would be probably quite difficult to bring to Japan. They also made me that offer to go to Japan. I didn't take it back then. I was a few times in long business trip there. I still ask myself why I didn't do it. With today's, let's say, view, I think it was not clever to not take it. But back then I simply wasn't in my life, I don't know, ready for it. It was quite hard times when I was in Japan. And in Japan I discovered the other side. At work, I didn't have time for anything else than work there, and it was so military, it was so disciplinary, it was so strict
and hierarchical.
It was so hierarchical. It was so stiff. The design leader of the time had been of a generation, I've been explained, that has been the generation that, together then with the founder, had, let's say, grown and made the success of the company. And that generation, let's call it post-war, had been so successful that it was no time for reconsideration a few years away from retirement. So there was for sure a certain rigidity built in the company exactly at that point that, to me, felt a bit déjà vu in a different style. And I was really not appealed to that. So I decided not to take that opportunity. And this was the point where I received a phone call from a guy called KISKA, and then decided to take a different turn.
How did he know about you? Had you guys met?
Yeah, and that's probably a bit we flew over. I've been at Art Center doing this sponsored project and terms, but entering the school, you had to perform 500 points to the TOEFL, test of English for foreign people, as it was an American university. And I made the 500 points to enter the school. And in order to enter third or fourth term, you had to perform 550. Now, my impression was I joined the school not being able to have any kind of conversation because I studied English, but I didn't have the chance to really practice it. So as a typical French mother tongue, it was really difficult, and I felt I progressed so much in the first few months, just having friends and, chatting and exchanging. I felt these 50 points, that cannot be a problem. So I registered for the test. It took time, you had to write a letter and send and get the date and, go to a specific place to get the test. So it took weeks, months to get the test, get the result. And I got 549 at the test. And this was a week before entering the term. I called the school, told them, look, I failed the test. What should I do now? They said, you have to take either an academic term or find yourself an internship. I didn't want to take an academic term because I said, this is waste of money. The fee were really high and it didn't make sense. So I said I need to find an internship, and I asked them any idea, because if I start sending letter now to car industry and ask them, hey, can I get a response? It's gonna take weeks before I eventually find the next opportunity. So basically, they said, yeah, yesterday there's a guy that visited the school. It's called. It's a small Austrian company, and you might want to give him a call, which I did. And a few days later, I drove down in my old Golf and arrived here and had an interesting internship in a small company. I think Gerald was in is in his second or third office, because he started. I don't know if you had the chance to explain this, but he started in at home, basically on his kitchen table. But he had moved into what was back then for him a larger studio, but the team was still like about 5 people, a part-time secretary, and that was it. Yeah, and I joined. I had a really great internship. I did a few big full-size tape drawings, airbrush rendered, and left after 4 months, and basically said to Gerald adieu. Was great, but the chances that we work together, I'm not sure. And I had kept an amazing memory, because of course Gerald, I don't have to explain, is a very is for sure a great person, but also inspiring designer. He already had his iconic laugh, and I had a really good time. And the nature around the colleagues back then, it was for sure one of my best time designing, yet being in a studio. So I kept a good memory, but I didn't imagine that this would be on my agenda again, because the studio was really small, and I didn't think that this would be probably the place where I could grow. Yeah, and when I got this famous phone call 10 years later,
yes, just completely out of the blue,
a bit out of the blue. If you believe in the alignments of the planet, and sometimes in some science, I wouldn't say I believe in it, but just giving food for thought for some that believe in it. I was at the IAA in Frankfurt on 9/11. They were the big screen, and we were at the designers' night, and we saw the plane crashing into the towers there, and we were all shocked, and there was no designer night anymore. We were completely shocked. And I remember having met Gerald there, and we had a proper conversation, things we didn't have for 10 years. I bumped into him before at motor shows, but I never really had the chance to talk to him again. And I think on that evening, I felt like, he has moved on. He had recruited an automotive designer as well. He had a small team of motorcycle designer. The company had grown quite a bit. I think they were already about 20, 25 on that at that point. And I realized, he has ambition and he wants to drive this forward. Still didn't think that might be my next career step, but it definitely made an impression. And when probably a year later, I got this phone call. A year and a half later, I got this phone call. It was the right time, because I was not really happy in Germany, in the area of Frankfurt. My wife also didn't really enjoy it, and I was really ready for a move. I had lost my Japanese boss of the time that I liked very much, had moved back to Japan, and the next crew was in the plane coming, and I thought, why would I do that? Because that's going to be another cycle of 3.5 years,
yes,
telling the same story to the next one. So all planet aligned, and I thought, yeah, it makes sense now to check this. So I drove down. I met Gerald. I realized that he had moved into this other building, not this one, the one next door, which was already quite impressive as a step. I think the company back then had already 35 people. The transportation team was really small. But basically, Gerald would give me the task to lead it, and the chance to acquire customer and to grow it and to approach any topics we would think relevant for this team. I had the chance also to have an opinion about KTM, because as working at Honda, KTM was a tiny niche player from Europe that didn't really interest my colleagues, but for me, in terms of design and what Gerald was doing with the team was definitely outstanding. And I told myself, if they're going to go into, I don't know, street bikes and invest into different engines, which they didn't have the technology before, it's really gonna go, because it felt so right what they were doing. So yeah, that felt to me like the right opportunity, and that's how I made the decision to come over.
When you joined, was it with the intention to go to do 2 wheels or to do 4 wheels, or to kind of oversee everything?
For sure, it was also one of my intrinsic motivation, as my career had taken very early on the shift on the motorcycle. To have the chance to also work on other customers. They were not this customer when I arrived, but I sensed that building a team, developing the skills, for sure, and I also had a bit of a network in automotive. I told myself there for sure will be the chance to develop that side as well, which interested me. And really, I didn't know it was named like that. I didn't even think of it like that. But probably with Insight today, I would say the entrepreneurship challenge
was more exciting.
Exciting. It felt like I do not need to convince people of what we're gonna do. There is one guy that wants this to happen, and we're gonna put all our energy to make it happen. So what is gonna stop us? I could not imagine. You could say maybe overconfidence, but it felt right to not have this censoring. First of all, if we'd fail, it would be our own failure, and that was, to me, as I said, I could not probably name it as entrepreneurship back then, but it really what it was and how it translated in my motivation.
I think to go and work for somebody like that, I think especially at that stage of your career, is like, it seemed like a perfect fit, because at every single point you're constantly rebelling against the authority. You've got ideas of how you want to do things, and it seems like, you weren't distracted. Again, I use this analogy all the time, but just by the perfect body side. You were very much in tune with the bigger picture, and that again is not necessarily a quality that well, it's not necessarily a common thing in designers, because you tend to get distracted by the...
and that was also one of my realization. I had many alumni friends from Art Center working in the car industry, and I already had the opportunity to get the other side of the mirror about what's really happening there. And even if my experience in Piaggio was of a let's say different type, there were a lot of parallels about how finally little the impact of design is, if the design leadership and if the overall company leadership is not tuned for it, and to give it really the, let's say, the steering, and to give it really the chance to create impact. So that was clear to me that back then, looking for a job in automotive would not be the thing, because spending years making great sketch for sure, but not really having certainty that you could create this impact was something that I already had in mind. And once again, entrepreneurship. Didn't know it was what it was, but it felt completely different, and that's exactly what I needed. So reality absolutely went even beyond what I expected, because within months the work was there. We needed to recruit people. I started to hire Clay and Elias and designers, and the team grew, and I got probably past also my managing capability very quickly. But then Gerald as a mentor was also fantastic, because he would take me on the side and say, it's not knowing it better, it's getting the people with you, and all these kinds of things that in a traditional environment you might be lucky enough to have maybe one person.
If you have one person like that, you're lucky.
You're so lucky. And it could also well be that there are other watching you making this mistake, thinking, if he fails, makes me look bigger.
Yeah.
So this is still today one of our fundamentals at KISKA. We have to win as a team. We have to succeed. We are only as good as, let me say, the weakest part of us. So you better make sure that yourself, your colleagues are in tune and can deliver. And this, even if it's not always perfect, even if it's not always feeling easy, is absolutely let's say a game-changing system, because we get the best out of people, you get the best of your personal development, you get challenged, you get pretty much always outside your comfort zone, but we don't let people down. At least we would not do this consciously. And this already back then was exactly how Gerald treated it. This is how I was confronting with the challenge of leading people, communicating with customer, developing service, or at least quality of the output. We did many things first, and we just had the ambition and had the will, the drive to every time take the next bigger challenge and see if we could deliver it. And usually, having signed a contract that we would deliver it,
you have to deliver
give you a certain extra push in the back to deliver it. And that's pretty much how it worked.
Sebastien, I have to ask you about the crossbow. I know that was one of the first significant projects that you did over here. The first question I want to know is, what was the brief for that car?
Yeah, I mean, I think we had an amazing team. The first brilliant project was I had the chance to bring together an amazing team. And we were parallel to that, probably just a little bit before, had already presented the first superbike for KTM, the RC8, first generation. And that bike, in that market of that time, especially from a design perspective, created quite an impact. It did because it was also the result of having really assembled really high talent. And when the crossbow, again, planet alignment happened, it was really, again, pure confidence. We didn't doubt a second that we could do something never done before. And although I was extremely busy, that surely does not change much in this environment, I knew I would put everything to make this thing happen, because you get this chance. We didn't do a car. We invented an archetype. We invented a company because that company didn't exist. There was a motorcycle company, but we've been sent alone in thinking about this one. And
whose idea was this?
Trying to give an overview of how the thing started that doesn't take 5 hours, I would say the management of KTM and some, let's say, some people that had been really part of the, let's say, first stroke of success of KTM, which was back then still a really small company. Some of these people had roots in Ingolstadt, had probably grown very close to people in the Audi management. And I think when they met around riding bikes or having socialization together, they talked about, hey, what could we do together? And what was already really visible from outside was that KTM broke the rules, but have been extremely successful with it and got away with a lot of, let's say, taking risk, but still making it happen. And I think Audi was extremely successful for sure, but as a car company with a huge scale, even if they probably in the car company back then were I don't know if they produced 500 or a million car, but they were ambition to go 4 times, 5 times, and it was obvious to the management of Audi that learning back what they probably had, decades before, was something that on a small experiment like these projects they do, these are projects that are born in company that they never believe they would do for real. They have enough money that they can play and do something,
Right.
something where people get to learn, maybe a different mindset, maybe a different speed, maybe a different leaner setup. And this was why on the Audi side they did it. On the KTM side, I think they were probably a bit more crazy and a bit more ready to
go.
Just go. Yeah, it was not about playing. It was about why not trying to do that. Yeah.
Yes.
And when the project started, we have been the hub because Audi selected really good people from different departments, one from engine transmission and one from chassis and one from suspension and so on. And they put them in a car and sent them to Salzburg. And when they arrived, they looked all very surprised to meet a small company called KISKA. And Gerald and I have been there talking to them about this idea that the management had to do more like a 4-wheel motorbike, and it could be the best of both worlds, like the cornering acceleration of a car and the actual takeoff acceleration of a motorbike, and the experience and the wind in your face of a motorbike, and they looked at us, and at that dinner that night they went and asked, so are we fired? And we didn't quite understand immediately what they meant, but they thought that as they didn't know each other and they came from different groups, they thought it cannot be. We have been selected because maybe we've done something wrong and we're sent into an impossible mission, and they just tell us that this is going to happen, but for sure it cannot happen because Audi makes serious business and not that stuff. So it must be that this is it, yeah. So we told them, no, really, the real top management of your company wants that to happen. Believe us, and it's an experiment, but we have to do it. So they showed up the next Monday, and then we started making decision one after the other, which in their world completely did not exist. Yeah,
because they've got to consult with 2 million people.
It could have been anything. Yeah, we say it's got 4-wheel. Yeah, that was somehow defined. And everything else we had to decide on the spot. So we said, fine, let's put 2, and we still have these sketches. Yeah. Let's put 2 mannequins in the air. Let's bring them as close as you can to each other. Let's build a frame around them, and let's put the 4 wheels on the corners and enough space to pack an engine in between. That's gonna be it, right? Which again was absolutely shocking to them, but that's how we made the sketch. Then we showed them to the management. They loved it. They said, wow, this is really different. We never thought could be done like that. And the project grew and we eventually got to a kind of back and kind of foam mill, and we presented all this material. We even traveled to Ingolstadt. We were in the presentation room of Audi Design. Same story. Not many people had been told what's going on. So we arrived there in the morning, put the poster on the wall, and had a presentation. And I guess half of the company or half of the people there felt really cannot be that something like that is happening and we don't get to know it. Yeah. So it has been a little bit of a storm, and Audi decided to step out of the project and said, was great as an experiment, and we really enjoyed it, and it was great to see how a small team can, bring something together in a few months. I think we had just the first 4 months in the project, but that will be it. And when this information landed on KTM side, Stefan Pierre said, well, I'm gonna do it, because it's cool and I wanna see it. So he asked, when is the next motor show? We said it's Geneva in 7-8 months. And he said, yeah, let's do a car and let's go to Geneva. Yeah.
Wow.
So we still had enough great relationship with some good people in Audi, and they told us, yeah, we know engineering partners that could help you. And this is how we got introduced to Dallara, and I've been then traveling to Italy almost every second week. The flights were not good. I was super busy, so different times. We worked the whole day, and on Tuesday evening at 6 o'clock we would sit in the car, drive to Italy through the Brennero, switching off the lights, and next morning having a meeting at 3 o'clock, driving back. And within half year we got the whole thing to this, let's say, pre-development stage. We pimped one of the prototype into the show car. We showed up at Geneva. I trim a lot of the inside story there because they could be a lot more. And there was no distribution, no car company, no serious plan about how to go on. But to everyone's surprise, and as the board of KTM had made the trip, and as they were basically the only one, we had a pretty small booth where you could put one car and a desk. By lunchtime, they had 200 guys showing up saying, I want to buy one. And as some of them had started their career on sales and remember how it worked, they were starting to take order, because why not? Yeah. So by the evening, they had 300 of these pre-ordered, and they said, hey, for sure we're going to do this. Yeah, because why not?
There's a lot of innovation on that car. I mean, apart from the whole thing is just like it's completely first of its kind. One of the things that you told me the first time we met was that awesome story about the mudguard, and you have to share that with everybody and me again.
What my crushing lesson into automotive regulation was some hard meetings in Dallara, where we met with the German TÜV and we talked about, so this is the car now, because we had we had a file on CAD, and we said, we want to know what's needed to make this road legal, yeah, because for sure it's more like a track car, but it's KTM, we want to make this for the road. We want people to be able to go on mountain road and be able to outperform anything, yeah. So they looked at us again, thinking we're completely crazy, and told us one after the other, every expert we brought, this is impossible. So we wrote down very carefully all what they said, and we took this, let's say, book about what are the meaning, what are the rules in homologations, and as a lawyer would do it, we went about every sentence and thought, how could we misuse the hole in this regulation that allows us to do what basically is not meant to be. Yeah, the fender is a good example. There is another 20 around the car where basically wheels are defined to be covered. Yeah, and I think all car designers know that, all the points that are needed to be covered. But again, the regulation is meant because there is a bodywork, and only from the wheel arch opening you have to define your wheel arch, how offset is the wheel arch from to the wheel, and this is what the regulation considers. Now, when you do an open car with open wheels, the regulation didn't foresee all what you could misuse out of it, which we did by having these floating fenders. What then was obvious is that we should position them on a similar height as regulation would force you to do, thinking you need to be able to mount chains and all kinds of things like that. Thing is, it's defined by TÜV that chains are going to be measured by this distance to the outer point of the tire. So the only point where you can actually measure that distance is exactly there. We made it look like a fin. You look at the fender, you think it's probably a rigidity topic, which it is as well. But fundamentally, it was...
You think it's a stylistic thing at first.
You think it's styling, but it was purely to be allowed to trim this fender and to stick it to the wheel, and yet be able to meet the homologation. The 99 millimeter bowl that is not supposed to enter the car. We have a complete open engine. The TÜV told us that the most extreme situation they had was to find ways to homologate the engine of the Veyron back then, where you actually could touch part of the engine from outside. But in our case, first, we could not design the engine. It was given. It was a serial production engine that we could not start softening every radius. But secondly, we had left complete openings. Yeah. So the only smart idea was we have to create blades and aerodynamic fins that happens to be distant by 99 millimeters, so that this 100 millimeter ball would never be able to enter. And I could go on like that if you have time.
Wow.
And it went on, and it allowed us to keep the original concept. I mean, at Geneva, a lot of my fellow friends from car industry came and said, what a cool show car. And we told them, yeah, great, but we really want to, we just sold now a few, so we really want to make it. And they said, yeah, sure.
Good luck.
Good luck. We know exactly how that turns usually.
Yes.
So it was something that was pure hard work. Let me say, figuring out all the rules, how to trick them.
Sebastien, when you joined the company, did you? I know there was kind of a visceral excitement about the opportunity for growth and all that sort of stuff. Did you necessarily envisage that you would be here as a partner and a chief creative officer like 20 years later?
No. No, it all happened gradually. For many years, when I was flying back from somewhere and landing in Salzburg, I was not feeling more home landing here than being wherever I had been before. So it wasn't a made decision for many years. You meet a lot of designers that are usually expats, because if you change job, usually you change country. And that was part of my package. I felt that could be it. I happen to also have a whole family with me. I have 2 kids, and it was something that I for sure had to consider. But the level of addiction that this freedom / responsibility gives to you, and the great team we could put together, the great atmosphere that we could create and steer in the company, the diversity the diversity of people, the diversity of field we are active in, because as you got to see it, maybe many people know about our, let's say, skills in motorcycle design, but we have 25 different services and activities in sports, in experience design, in communication and branding, and all these fields coming together under one roof with creative from all over the world, with strategists from all over the world, is unique. We are often asked who are our competitor, who do we reckon being a competition of us, and we always struggle because yes, we meet company consultant or expert in specific field where we also have services. We do not really know company that offer this width and depth at the same time. So this addiction, once your mind is stretched, very difficult to come back from that. And the evolution from a professional point of view, in the industry, you probably think of what could be my next career step or what could be my next promotion. This is not how it works at KISKA. Sometimes I have to explain people that challenge me about what they would like to be promoted to, and I always explain them that in here you do not have to ask for a promotion. In here you promote yourself, not by showing off, by making things happen to the point where the organizational structure around you have to be adapted to the new role. So every 2.5, 3 years I've been promoted, if you want, because the job I had leading 5, 20, 40, 50, hundreds, 150, 200s is a different job, is a different organizational structure. And eventually at some stage we have to look at it and say, okay, how is this called now and what are the KPIs of this job? Because reality has overtaken the speed in which you would normally look at these career steps.
You have just told me over the last however long we've been talking that you're clearly, at least in your younger day, were always like pushing hard against the powers that be or the system or whatever the case is. How do you deal with it now when a younger designer comes in, particularly somebody that you feel is maybe not that experienced? Because I guess like your time, I mean, you're already shouting the odds as an intern at Piaggio, for example. Like how would you deal with a young person that you feel you still got a little bit to learn without discouraging them?
Drive / ambition is our petrol. I mean, this is what we dig every day to find more. Because we have to have high performing teams. We have to recruit the best talent, although they have big names they could go to, and yet they come to KISKA. Usually they have sense there is something they haven't figured out elsewhere, or even they have been used to a certain level of freedom and a certain level of self, let's say, responsibility, maybe in school, and through their internship they couldn't feel the difference and felt, this is the next most logical step. I feels like being with my friends doing my diploma project every day. So this leads, of course, people to grow and to join the company, to grow quite fast, and eventually getting to a stage where after a few years they realize they've done already what sometimes would take maybe 10 years in the industry. And then they come back and they say, look, I'm responsible of this product. I've designed it from top to toe. I've done mostly it alone. I've steered groups of engineers and modelers and other fellow designers. I've learned it all.
Yes, I know everything.
Now, it's true that you can learn fast being, let's say, dropped in cold water, and that's exactly what happened. But learning is usually a monodirectional act. Yeah, you learn this way, and then you have to learn this way, and then you have to learn this way. It's a stair. Yeah, and usually at the point where they've seen that they could pretty much, in full control, deliver a design, a production design, what then happened is that they haven't maybe realized how much support, how much steering, how much supervision is the wrong word, like really good-minded guidance have been put around it so that it did happen in that way. And that believing that this experience they had was just purely out of them, might be quite a shortcut. So it is for sure difficult to take people that are usually in this very on high kind of mode. But we are creative. We've been there ourselves before, and the usually, and this is also a very KISKA-ish thing. Reality proves you right or wrong. Yeah, and this is also what's happening at KISKA. You want this responsibility. You might even get them. You're gonna struggle. You're gonna fail, not because we won't let you fail, because we cannot afford you to fail, but you're gonna feel very much how painful it is to hit the wall.
Yes.
And if you want to stand up and move on, there are certain personal development you will have to admit are needed. And this is, I think, very much the healthy side of how things get let's say, trained and teach through the company. Yes, we will tell people where we see their strengths and weakness, and we have evaluations and feedback rounds. Often very successful, highly talented, high potential, super smart people, that are the ones we like to have, do not necessarily listen to that. But reality will prove, and so we are supportive, but we also do not overprotect people from this realization.
Sebastien, I ended the discussion with Gerald on a KTM question, and I've got a pretty easy one for you. Who came up with the slogan of "Ready to Race"?
There are different versions of the story, so without knowing which
one, I want your version.
Okay, I can give you an answer on that. I don't know who did the wording of it, but I know that Ready to Race is in the gene of that company and is in the gene of the owner of that company. And this is also something that we have learned and that we apply to how we consult customer. Nowadays, we are asked by companies, overseas company, local company, startup, to develop complete package, product strategy, design, and brand. And it would not be the first time that a CEO or even a founder of such a company come to us and say, these are the 4 values that I want to carry, because we are innovative, we do this, we do that. And we always tell them, you cannot set values that you are not able to live and able to deliver on. KTM is 100%
ready to race.
It's pure adrenaline. It's pure petrol. It's pure winning. It's the absolute purest form of it. Therefore, the relevance of it is also let me say, given, because we also understand this as a sort of very intrinsic value that people carry. You know, there've been people running on horses with swords hundreds of years ago, and going into a motocross fight or going into a MotoGP fight or enduring Dakar rally marathon is in the gene of some people. These people know, and these people you can't cheat. So when they see KTM and when they see how KTM act as a company, not how we design or how we communicate, we are supporting this true soul that is in the company. We express it through design. You know, we didn't invent it; it's there.
Yes.
Yeah? And the fact that we keep the, let's say, reconfirming through everything that is being, let's say, done, how KTM is expressing their true belief in this ready to race, is something that customer love, is something that customer can identify to, and is something where basically you cannot cheat. You cannot make a marketing plan on ready to race. You have to live it, and you have to win race. So very humble, and I'm pretty sure Gerald must have answered in a humble way. We are there to express, paint that maybe here or there hold back the mirror when the one or the other people in the organization maybe have forgotten or see a certain shortcut, because yes, they have also pressure to grow and develop, and it could be here or there the need to maybe soften certain edge in order to reach maybe short-term success. But fundamentally, there is such an authentic drive in that company that really what we are doing is, giving the suit, but the human being inside, you cannot cheat. Yeah.
Last question. What would a young designer need to possess in their skill set to join a company like KISKA?
Yeah, as said before, we have probably 30 plus services. There are profession and skills that are needed in KISKA that you do not even get teach at school, because there are certain topics that are teach at school. You can learn automotive or transportation design, you can learn UX, UI, you can learn communication. These are the major topics. There are also, I would say, called hidden profession, visualization, color and trim, but in a very specific twist, because we don't do CMF as it's intended and it's taught as in the car industry. We do this on product, we do this on sports product, where graphics and material and textures are. So you can go on, I could go on like that about skills, but fundamentally it's not about skills only, it's about a certain attitude. And what we are searching in candidate is this drive, is this attitude, wanting to be challenged, wanting a canvas where they can express themselves. We give them this canvas, we let them impress us, and if we see these, let me say, ingredient, the skills that might be missing here or there, or this profession that is not exactly learned there or cannot be exactly transferred from your previous job into this job, is maybe less of an issue. Yeah, that's how we look at candidates. I would also add that the personal passion in topics, we say we are driven by performance. You know, we have a lot of customer. We have so many fields in which we act, so many industry. It was hard for us to put boxes and say we are active in automotive, and we are active in motorcycle design, and we are active in mobility, and we are active in sports and apparel, and we are active in product design, because these are, it feels like they are different industry, but I could name you 10 company in transportation where we are not interested to work for.
Okay.
We are interested in what we call high involvement. And high involvement means you're ready to tattoo on your arm the brand and the let's say sports or skills that you're really passionate about. When this is the type of, let's say, field, we have something to bring to our customer. And the people that can design this, for sure, have to understand this mechanism. You might not need to be a former snowboarder champion or motocross X game champion, which we also have in the company, to be able to design this product or the experience built around. But you need to have an understanding of how this adrenaline and chemical in your brain works when you're thinking of this thing that you desire so much. Yeah, when you understand this mechanism, you can design it. Designing desire, and we look for people that bring with them these ingredients, not across all the different fields we are in, because that we haven't met yet. But if they have maybe made this experience in the one or the other field, we can really help them transfer this in other industry. And this is what's exciting, because there is never a year that is the same as the previous one. We get projects from in topics that we hadn't touched before. Technology brings new challenges, and this is really what keeps ourselves and our people motivated.
Sebastien, thank you very much for your time. Thank you for inviting me to this beautiful place. I've thanked everybody, but yeah, thank you. Without you, it wouldn't have happened. Cheers. And if this is not an advert for a great place to be in, then I don't know what is. I mean, look, it's just, it's cool. It's super cool.
We are not seeking advert. We are very keen to let people know, because we sometimes have this maybe understated is the wrong word. You know, Gerald is a very humble, understated person.
Yes.
As a company, we cannot say that we act understated, because we for sure also communicate and have social medias and organize events. But we know that our field is very, we are very diverse, and at the same time we're really unique. So people tend to not understand us or not know exactly what's going on in here.
Yeah.
So we're really keen to let people know, what the company is about. Let people alike that have the same passion get to know us, and eventually join, send the application, bring project, come together on a partnership. We have a lot of there's a lot of people that eventually have identified us, and 20 years later tell us, I've always had you on the radar. I wanted a job here, or I now run a company and I really want to do a project with you. Yeah, this for us is the best compliment. That's really what we enjoy. So hopefully through your podcast, we get few of these extra people to get to know us, and maybe 20 years from now they'll run a company, come over and say we want to do a project together. You never know, and who knows? I mean, it's just all the things that people have been able to see us just having a look inside the studio as well, and all the surroundings and everything. It's just absolutely, it's magic. And as I discussed with Gerald, it's one thing. There are consultancies that exist. There are advanced design centers that exist. I also always wondered to myself, what is it about KISKA? Because you always think there's just you associate one of the first things you think about is KTM motorcycles and KISKA, and those two things go hand in hand. And then you step inside and you see all the things that you guys do. And it's not just a case of you guys do all these different products, but it's also things like branding, for example, and you talked early on about the width, but it's also the depth and the synergy as well, how all these things are work together and are communicated, and so
a lot of there will be plenty of companies out there that say, "Oh, we're a one-stop shop," and this is like so much. This is like so much more than that. But I don't know, to my knowledge, that there's anything else like this that exists, and it's incredibly inspiring to be here. So thank you.
Thank you. Same to you, by the way, because it's such a pleasure to have this chat. And every time I listen to your podcast, I discover people really differently. I know sometimes these people out of meeting them at motor shows, and it's such a different light you bring on people from our profession that I think you're doing really great for it. One might sometimes think people are a bit arrogant here or there, or people are difficult to approach. But often discovering the other side and having talks about how they got into this profession makes them a lot more human. So yeah, I think what you're doing is really needed for this field, and hopefully will help a lot of young talent to find the right way into the industry.
Thank you, Sebastien.
Thanks.
Cheers.
Man.